Hey guys, it's Matthew here once again with the follow-up video on the end game of the Ethereal Knives Impale Champion. And the character hit 95, maybe 96, I don't even remember. I went a little bit deeper on the leveling, 95 I think. Because it was a very fun build to play, and EK champion with Impale was just like pretty damn strong overall. It was surprising to me how good an Ethereal Knives build could feel, especially with Lightning Warp being as quick and snappy as it is. And to get Lightning Warp to feel that good, you just need to link it up to some good less duration, have some good cast speed, have some good movement speed, and then it is probably the best and my favorite movement skill in the game, just because it basically takes you where you want to go and instantly. So while I'm using Ethereal Knives with the Helm enchant that does the circle, you can see we've got circular Nova style AoE. Lightning Warp feels pretty good still, but if you get the Helm enchant with reduced duration on Lightning Warp, which lowers the sort of delay even further, it becomes pretty much instant. And during the bossing on this character, I basically swap out a helm so that I'm no longer using Nova, and then took on a Lightning Warp Helm enchant instead. Anything will work there. You don't need any Helm enchant. The idea is to just have a better directional Ethereal Knives during bossing, because with the Nova, while that is great and very nice for sort of good coverage, there are limited projectiles, so sometimes you might be missing a target with the, I don't know, 10 or whatever projectiles you're shooting in a Nova. You won't guarantee hitting something that's a little bit further away from you. Whereas if you turn it into a directional hit, no longer a Nova, then wherever you're pointing with your direction, you're pretty much going to always hit it. So that's why we swap out the helm for bosses. Otherwise, you can see the mapping is just really nice, and an acceleration shrine, for example, makes things quite a bit quicker as well, with a bit more proj speed and just a bit more cast speed once again. But the character did end up scaling cast speed quite high to a level that was very comfortable, just getting cast speed from across the gear and flasks and passive tree, and then also a pretty buffed up haste makes casting and self-casting pretty damn nice. And overall this character was fairly good for self-cast, because we were a champion, we were kind of thick, so something like 50k armor with determination and flasks up, using Fortify permanent, the Slayer Leech node, which gave damage reduction, and then of course Molten Shell. So you don't see Molten Shell on my bar, but it's on my second bar, and it does still kind of feel like cheat mode. Like essentially I've only got 4k life, but I'm still pretty tanky. But the difference is, as soon as you press Molten Shell for like those few seconds that it's up, you are pretty close to immortal. And I very rarely use something like a Molten Shell, because just not too necessary, and I don't really have huge armor scaling all that often, or maybe just don't feel like having the room to jam it into the build setup. But having it just as a button to press directly when you want it, as opposed to specifically on your left mouse button, so just autopiling it every now and again, having it as an actual backup key is pretty damn clutch. So the mapping was amazing, really enjoyed EK for that, and then started taking on some bosses, and ended up clearing all of the Ubers. I didn't do Searing Exarch because, once again, just not spec'd for it, and it's a bit annoying to do that way, but I do think we should be able to do it on this character. Most bosses had like a death or two. This one I just fucked up because I lightning warped onto a tentacle, but a really clean, snappy lightning warp is actually pretty insane for Uber Eater of Worlds, especially during that phase. You have that ball phase and you're supposed to go onto certain areas, and with lightning warp you can just click directly onto like each section immediately, and feels really good. Likewise for like Maven memory game and stuff, you just poof from one spot to the next, and feels super clean. So can recommend Lightning Warp in the right setups, feels really good. and I look forward to doing more of that in the future. Either way, I was a bit skeptical about how this would go for bossing and uber bossing in particular, because uber bossing really doesn't lend itself well to standing still and casting for any duration, but we are a little bit thicker than I originally thought, and on top of that, the DPS is better than I thought it would be. I was at something like 20 to 40 million DPS, depending on uptime of certain things, and if I'd press Righteous Fire. I pretty much didn't press Righteous Fire for almost any of the Uber bosses, just because it's a bit sketch having most of your regen go away, since my leech and regen is entirely consumed by the Righteous Fire when I press it. So for the most part, just sitting at like 25 million DPS, something like that. Once again, that still is a bit situational, whether or not the Intensify from your pinpoint is up, because you got to stand still to cast that for a few times. Flasks are up, the Pride buff has ramped, that sort of thing. So a lot of the time, maybe it's more like 15 to 20 million DPS. Either way, it worked out pretty well, and yeah, there was only like 1 or 2 deaths per Uber, and could probably do even better on most with enough practice. It was a pretty nice playstyle. I didn't expect to have this much single target damage on Ethereal Knives, since that is typically the problem with an EK build. You get good coverage, good clear, but then it falls a little bit flat on single target. Impale, however, seemed to work out really well. There is some really good scaling to be had there with the Impale gloves now, just for certain Fizz skills. And then, of course, the Sandstorm Tripanon combo was pretty filthy for what it is. It wasn't really hard to put together, and you just got to take care of other damage scaling. So I would actually be close to calling this build of the league if it wasn't for the previous build before this one, the Volcanic Fissure. Simply put, that one just had a bit more well-roundedness for its defenses, whereas this one, probably better DPS, better clear, but a bit less well-rounded for some content, so we probably couldn't take on a Simulacrum, something like that. Really good character. Hope you guys enjoyed the EK. I'll leave you with the Uber Elder. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. See you guys next time. Oh my god, what the fuck was that? Hit me so hard. Looking pretty good. Hope that doesn't jinx me, but yep. I mean, this is the part where it starts to get quite a bit more rampy and intense, so I wouldn't call it a jinx as much as I'd say, yes, it's getting harder. I just had to press Mold Shell there, which means I might die. It's not fair! Had to press it, and then too many things happened afterwards. Easy. Road is such a glorious mess of a fight. Like, Cortex to me is, you know, when it's bad, it's just bad. Like, yep, also a mess, but not glorious. This is just a righteous mess. I mean, fucking hell, dude. The loot today. Supremely not good. A 777.